I ended up going to a school called Professional Children's School, where a lot of celebrities went. So Scarlett Johansson was in my class, and actually Jack Antonoff, who's like Taylor Swift's like producer, he was in my graduating class. And it was just a tremendous, like when you see, they give you like newsletters of how our alumni are doing, but it's like ridiculous. Like,
Here,
the people that are like
they're
on the
number
alumni.
one.
Yeah,
Everything.
It's literally crazy. It's like Jenna Malone and Macaulay Culkin and Kieran Culkin, and like the whole Culkin family went there. So it's just this really amazing, good school that accommodated for professional children. So eventually when I started working for Disney, I was about 14, and then I moved out there. They picked up the show around 16. I turned 16 the day we started filming. And yeah, I mean, it's wild, but I was able to make it work, and then ended up going to Ivy League school.
Wow.
Okay.
Or university.
Winding it back a bit to all the super crazy successful people that were in your class, is it hard when you look at all these people from your class that are Scarlett Johansson, Jack Antonoff, all these people that are going bonkers in their careers, and is it hard not to compare yourself to that?
I think I fell into that trap for years of like, even when I was working at Disney, there being, immense success for people like Shia, Raven, Hilary, like they were all sort of my colleagues, and we all took very different roads, mentally, spiritually, financially, like everything was so different about us. We were very different brands, genders, races, just like the different infrastructures of our families. You know what I'm saying? Like Shia's family, we know, was troubled from the jump. And then Hilary had a really, really great family structure to a lot of degrees about what that would look like for her. And I know her sister, and I think they're a really tight-knit family that probably helped in times of there being sort of confusion and fame, and financial success, I think, has a lot to do with that, the outcomes of that. So for me, I was always told that education was the most important thing. So when I turned 18, Even Stevens was ending. We had done one of the Disney movies. And then right like after that movie like wrapped, I had the opportunity to go to Barnard, which is at Columbia University. And so I was like, either I do this or I stay in LA. I think I had like a pilot with like Fox or something like that, and it didn't end up getting picked up. So I was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to go to college and have this quote unquote normal life all of a sudden. And none of that happened for me. The transition of that was like very strange for me. And so at that point, when they were like calling me to be like, hey, would you be interested in being Belle in Beauty and the Beast on Broadway? I was like, oh, great. Like I can go escape to the theater. Mm-hmm. And so I guess when you're talking about the comparison thing, circling back to this, I think just everybody has their own journey. And for a long time, like you tend to use other people's journeys as a means to motivate yourself through shame. Mm-hmm. And, when you work super young, like that shame of not getting the part or not succeeding, it is so loaded for you because that success means, oh, I have so much approval in my parents' eyes, and like all of their time that they sacrificed is now going to amount to something. Mm-hmm. So it's a very thick, complex situation. I'm grateful that now I have the distance from it to be like, I just hope everyone's doing okay. But I will say I wouldn't want to be in Shia's shoes because he's had so much that he's had to work past. And now I've been sober 8 years from alcohol, and everything. So it's just kind of like,
Congrats.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Round of applause for that.
Having a baby does that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like,
You kind of got forced to be sober.
Forced, exactly. But no, it's just the most amazing thing. So I just look at other people. I'm like, you know what? This is all happening for some reason that we can't understand. I've got to focus on myself.
The sobriety thing, I'm curious, drinking, did it become a problem because of comparison? Did it become a problem?
That's a great point.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
You kind of talked about how like you want your parents' time to amount to something. Like, do you think that you felt pressure as a kid pretty consistently as you were doing all these jobs while it was maybe fun for you? Like also pressure involved?
100%. I think that, child performers, or what I call them as high performing children, because that could also be athletes, dancers, musicians, like any child that's kind of growing up in a very like highly competitive environment kind of has the same outcome in terms of them being like, okay, this is my identity. But at the same time, time is elusive because you're not thinking of your childhood in days, you're thinking of it in accomplishments.
Yeah, I feel like for me, being just your average kid, like my marker was summer break. And so with school, like it's like, okay, that's another school year. And you guys didn't have that marker.
Yeah, I mean, summer break, which meant that you were on hiatus, at least from when I was working with Disney, would mean that, hey, I hope Disney gives me a movie to shoot. So like, for example, my movie that I got to shoot was Cadet Kelly, and that was in like the summer of the second season or something like that, right? I was like 16 or 17 at that point. And it was really cool because I felt like, wow, like I'm doing something other than the Even Stevens show. And then after that, Kim Possible kind of happened. So I just think like you start to think of everything as, I would call it like a transactional mindset where it's just like, okay, well, what's the next thing? You as kids shouldn't be thinking like that all the time. I think it can kind of destroy the joy of childhood to some degree. I mean, it also offers, like I said, like I don't want to come off bitter. I think people on the internet are like, oh, she's bitter, or that she doesn't have this person's career, and it's like, it's really not that. I'm now 40 and it's like perspective is so rewarding. And so the more questions you can ask yourself or the more conversations you can have with folks, this is just what it is. I do find it really interesting to talk about, to be honest.
Oh, me too, especially with how much the media has been bringing these things to light as of recently. I was thinking there's been a long conversation about Jeanette McCurdy's book, and it makes me curious, like, do you think that what you were doing as a child affected your relationship with your mom or your...
Yeah, sadly, my mom and I have struggled in the past. Like I think like where I was extremely compliant, quite like Jeanette. Like when I did a YouTube video on my podcast Vulnerable, which I have actually stopped doing because I felt like there was a tremendous amount of pressure for me to do everything right as a sort of quote unquote advocate. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm not representing the community the way that you can't be all things to everyone. And therefore I was like, I need to just take care of myself and take care of my family. And like, that's where my focus and my sobriety. Like, I think that has a lot to do with everything that I've done. And even talking about this stuff is because when you're sober, you have to have like a tremendous amount of accountability for the things you've done. And so I've tried to do that, but again, everything's messy when you start scratching at people's childhoods. And it sometimes I think even me representing a part of y'all's childhoods, if I start talking about it, it can offend people because they're like, wait, but you're supposed to be this for me, because if you're not, then what does that mean? Because I used to watch your show.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I used to watch your show because I felt really bad about being bullied. But then what does it mean that you were being bullied by It's just like, it kind of breaks my heart when I think about it now that like I would be maybe taking that away from people, because my fans to me are always the kids that, watch the shows. So
I've never thought of it that way. And that's so interesting how, yeah, I mean, people view you as the character that you played, and that's how they knew you. That's how they had a relationship with you through the screen. So
because they're kids, it's not like they're adults. Like they can't be like, oh yeah, like Jason Momoa, he's obviously not Poseidon.
Well, so one of my first memories of like going to the zoo as a kid, I remember getting so excited when I came across the naked mole rats because of Kim Possible.
Yay!
I was like, I know that. I was like, that's on TV, and like, awesome. I want to go look at the naked mole rats.
Funny.
That's so cool.
And so like,
they're really ugly.
They are. They're so weird.
Such a random. Like,
right?
I never thought about how random that is.
I think I've asked the creators, Bob and Mark, about it, and they were like, we were just looking for some sort of an animal because it's Disney, and like we just thought of something that this guy Ron would have that's not like your typical pet. And I think they thought of like ferret and like guinea pig.
Matt was a ferret kid, so
I did have a ferret.
Ferrets are actually quite cool.
I taught my ferret how to roll over.
Yeah.
He could jump through hoops.
Yes.
I wasn't able to have a dog as a kid, so my ferret was my dog.
Honestly, like I actually would absolutely have a ferret. They're quite clean. Was it clean?
They can smell. And there was a spot in my room where you knew where the ferret would pee all the time because it turned yellow in the carpet,
I dated a guy who had roommates that had this ferret, and they never named the ferret. They just called it Ferret, and they would have it drink beer and stuff like that. And I would always be like, guys, you guys are really wild. But like the ferret was happy and it lived a long life. So I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
The ferret never had a sobriety. I feel like naked mole rat might have been because like for like kids, anything with the word naked was just like,
oh, that's
funny.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Naked.
Exactly.
That definitely was what it was. I was like, it's naked.
When people approach you in public, what is the job that they like bring up the most do you think?
I think impossible at this
Okay.
point, which is really strange because when you think of voice actors, you don't think of their faces. You
Yeah.
don't think of their
You're
faces.
right.
I've interviewed plenty of them. I had a podcast with Will Friedle, who was Unstoppable's voice, and he's Batman's voice, and he was on Boy Meets World. And like it was called I Hear Voices, and it was legitimately a podcast. We did it on iHeart a couple years ago, and it was like we interviewed Eric, oh my God, see, I'm not even remembering his last name, Eric Bauza. Eric Bauza, you guys would probably not know, but he's like literally the voice of every Looney Tune now. He's the voice of the rabbit. Who's the rabbit?
Wait, this is so
Bugs
bad.
Bunny?
Bugs
Yes,
Bunny.
He's the voice of Bugs Bunny. He's the voice
Okay.
of like 5 others, 12 other, and he gets like literally he has like Emmy awards and like
Wow.
I'm saying this guy is the most massive, amazing, and a great person. But it's like you would never know these people's faces. However, they know my face. And the reason they know my face because they don't realize it because they may be on the younger side is because all the stuff that I had done, Cadet Kelly or even Steve, it's like all of that stuff kept playing in sort of the world. And so
Oh,
whether
yeah.
it was a commercial or whether it was their older sibling that was watching it,
Yeah.
it was kind of like my face kind of creeping in somehow.
Yeah.
So it's that familiarity. So when I meet folks, it's like they go back in their minds and they regress to being those kids.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I'm always like, I love them so much because it's like it's literally like seeing people turn into kids immediately.
Aw, that's really sweet.